Welcome to Midnight Docks, where history comes alive. Here, we dive deep into the greatest stories of our past, told in detail, so you can relive the moments that shaped our world. Tonight, we bring you one of the most fascinating stories in European history, the entire history of Spain, from ancient cave paintings to mighty empires, from the golden age of exploration to civil war and democracy. This is the epic tale of Spain, told in one continuous journey. Spain is more than a country. It is a crossroads of civilizations. For thousands of years, this land has been home to warriors and poets, conquerors and explorers. Its story is one of rise and fall, glory and hardship, faith and power. In this one-hour journey, we will trace Spain's history step by step, from its earliest inhabitants to the modern nation we know today. So sit back and let's begin with the dawn of humanity on the Iberian Peninsula. Prehistoric Iberia. Our story begins over 35,000 years ago in the caves of Altamira in northern Spain. Here, Paleolithic humans painted breathtaking images of bison, horses, and deer. These cave paintings, still vivid today, are among the most famous examples of prehistoric art in the world. As millennia passed, tribes spread across the peninsula. By around 1000 BCE, two main peoples dominated the land, the Iberians in the east and south, and the Celts in the north and interior. They lived in fortified villages, farmed the land, and traded with outsiders. Phoenicians from the eastern Mediterranean founded colonies like Cadiz, one of the oldest cities in Europe. Greeks and later Carthaginians followed, building trade networks and introducing new goods. But these foreign contacts also brought conflict. And in the 3rd century BCE, during the great clash between Carthage and Rome, Iberia would be drawn into a struggle that would change its future forever. Roman Hispania. In 218 BCE, during the Second Punic War, Roman legions landed in Iberia to fight Carthage. After decades of brutal warfare, Rome triumphed, and the peninsula became known as Hispania. For 6 centuries, Hispania flourished as part of the Roman world. Cities like Merida, Tarragona, and Córdoba boasted theaters, aqueducts, and forums. Roads connected distant corners of the land, making trade and travel easier than ever before. Latin became the dominant language, eventually evolving into Spanish, Catalan, and Portuguese. Christianity spread rapidly, and by the 4th century it was firmly established. Hispania produced Roman emperors, most famously Trajan and Hadrian, who left their mark on the empire itself. But as Rome weakened, waves of invaders pressed on its borders. In the early 5th century, Roman authority collapsed, and Hispania was left vulnerable. The Visigoths. Into this vacuum stepped the Visigoths, a Germanic tribe. They established their capital at Toledo and ruled for nearly 3 centuries. The Visigoths preserved Roman law, converted to Catholicism, and sought to unify the land under one faith. But their kingdom was fragile. Infighting among nobles, weak kings, and social unrest made it vulnerable. And in the year 711, a new force from North Africa would sweep across the Strait of Gibraltar and forever alter the destiny of Spain. The entire history of Spain, Al-Andalus, Muslim Spain. In 711, an army of Berbers and Arabs crossed the Strait of Gibraltar. Led by Tariq ibn Ziyad, they defeated the Visigoth king Roderick at the Battle of Guadalete. Within a few years, almost the entire peninsula fell under Muslim control, becoming known as Al-Andalus. For centuries, Al-Andalus thrived as a center of learning, science, and culture. Cities like Córdoba, Granada, and Seville became jewels of the medieval world. In Córdoba, the great mosque stood as a symbol of both faith and architecture. Libraries held hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, while scholars studied astronomy, medicine, philosophy, and mathematics. Christians, Muslims, and Jews lived side by side, exchanging knowledge in what is often remembered as a golden age of coexistence. But Al-Andalus was never fully united. Rival dynasties rose and fell. The Umayyads of Córdoba, the Almoravids, the Almohads, each struggled to maintain control. And in the north, small Christian kingdoms prepared for centuries of resistance, a struggle known as the Reconquista. The Reconquista. The Reconquista began almost immediately after 711. In the mountains of Asturias, the Christian leader Pelayo won a small victory at the Battle of Covadonga. It was a modest beginning, but it marked the start of a centuries-long fight to reclaim the peninsula. Over time, Christian kingdoms grew stronger. Leon, Castile, Aragon, and Navarre pushed southward, taking back land from Muslim rulers. By the 11th century, the balance began to shift. The famous Battle of Las Navas de Tolosa in 1212 dealt a heavy blow to Muslim power. Slowly, Christian forces advanced, until only the Emirate of Granada remained. Finally, in 1492, after a 10-year campaign, Ferdinand of Aragon and Isabella of Castile captured Granada. The Reconquista was complete. Spain was united under Catholic monarchs. That same year, 1492, another event would transform not only Spain, but the entire world. Christopher Columbus's voyage westward, sponsored by the Spanish crown. The Spanish Empire. The late 15th and early 16th centuries marked the birth of a global empire. With the voyages of Columbus, Spain gained a foothold in the Americas. Soon, conquistadors like Hernán Cortés and Francisco Pizarro conquered vast empires in Mexico and Peru. Ships carrying gold, silver, and exotic goods crossed the Atlantic, enriching Spain and funding its ambitions in Europe. Under the rule of Charles V and his son Philip II, Spain became the most powerful kingdom in the world. It controlled territories across the Americas, parts of Italy, the Low Countries, and even the Philippines, named in honor of Philip II. But empire brought challenges. Wars in Europe drained resources. The Protestant Reformation divided Christendom. The Spanish Armada's failed attempt to invade England in 1588 marked a turning point. Still, the 16th century was Spain's golden age. Writers like Cervantes, painters like El Greco, and architects left a lasting cultural legacy. But shadows loomed. By the 17th century, military defeats, economic troubles, and rising rivals like England and France weakened Spain's grip on world power. Decline and turmoil, 17th to 18th centuries. The 18th century brought dynastic change. With the death of the last Habsburg king, the Bourbon dynasty took power, linking Spain to France. Reforms modernized the country, but wars continued to sap strength. In the early 19th century, Napoleon's armies invaded, plunging Spain into the brutal Peninsular War. Guerrilla resistance and British support eventually drove the French out, but the war left Spain devastated. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, Spain's colonies in the Americas fought for independence. By the mid-1800s, Spain had lost nearly all of its overseas empire, keeping only Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. Political instability followed. Coups, civil wars, and changes of monarchy plagued the nation. Spain was adrift, searching for its identity in a rapidly changing world. The 20th century, Civil War, and Franco. The early 20th century was marked by further decline. In 1898, after defeat in the Spanish-American War, Spain lost its last colonies. The empire was gone. Social tensions rose at home. In 1931, the monarchy was overthrown, and the Second Spanish Republic was declared. But the Republic was deeply divided between left and right. In 1936, the Spanish Civil War erupted, one of the bloodiest conflicts of the century. General Francisco Franco and his nationalists fought against Republicans in a brutal 3-year struggle. By 1939, Franco emerged victorious, establishing a dictatorship that would last nearly 4 decades. During World War II, Spain remained neutral but isolated. It wasn't until Franco's death in 1975 that Spain began a new chapter, one of democracy and modernization. Modern Spain. After 1975, Spain transitioned peacefully into democracy under King Juan Carlos I. The 1978 Constitution established a parliamentary monarchy, and Spain joined the European Union in 1986. In the decades since, Spain has become a modern, democratic, and prosperous nation, known for its art, culture, tourism, and innovation. Yet challenges remain: debates over regional independence, economic crises, and political divisions. Still, Spain today is a vibrant country, shaped by its extraordinary past. From cave paintings to global empire, from civil war to democracy, the story of Spain is one of resilience, creativity, and transformation. The rise of the Spanish Empire. The year 1492 was more than just the fall of Granada. It was the year Spain stepped onto the world stage. Ferdinand and Isabella, the Catholic monarchs, united Castile and Aragon into a powerful kingdom. Their sponsorship of Christopher Columbus's voyage brought Spain into contact with the New World, a discovery that would reshape history. Within a few decades, Spain built a vast empire. Conquistadors crossed oceans, driven by ambition, faith, and the promise of riches. Hernán Cortés toppled the Aztec Empire in Mexico. Francisco Pizarro defeated the mighty Incas in Peru. Shiploads of silver and gold began to pour into Spain. In Europe, Spain became the dominant power. Under Charles V, who also ruled the Holy Roman Empire, Spain was at the heart of a realm so large it was said, "The sun never sets on its lands." His son, Philip II, ruled during Spain's golden century. He made Madrid the capital, built the Grand El Escorial Palace, and oversaw a flourishing of art and literature. But power brought enemies. Spain fought the Ottoman Empire in the Mediterranean, clashed with Protestants in the Netherlands, and in 1588 launched the Great Armada against England, only to suffer a devastating defeat. Despite these struggles, this was Spain's cultural golden age. Writers like Miguel de Cervantes, author of Don Quixote, gave the world new forms of literature. Painters like El Greco and Velázquez filled Spain with timeless art. Spain was at its height, but cracks were forming beneath the surface. Decline and Bourbon reforms. The 17th century brought decline. Wars drained the treasury. Silver from the Americas lost its value, and rivals like France, England, and the Dutch Republic grew stronger. Spain's once invincible power began to falter. In 1700, the last Habsburg king of Spain died without an heir. The War of Spanish Succession erupted, drawing in much of Europe. In the end, Spain's throne passed to the Bourbon dynasty, relatives of the kings of France. The Bourbons tried to reform Spain. They centralized government, modernized the army, and encouraged trade. But Spain was no longer the global superpower it had once been. The 19th century brought new troubles. In 1808, Napoleon invaded Spain, sparking the brutal Peninsular War. Ordinary Spaniards rose in resistance, inventing the very word guerrilla, little war, to describe their tactics. With British help, the French were driven out, but Spain was left shattered. At the same time, revolutions erupted across Spain's colonies in the Americas. Leaders like Simón Bolívar and José de San Martín fought for independence. One by one, Spain lost its overseas empire. By the mid-1800s, only Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines remained. At home, political chaos reigned. Monarchies rose and fell. Republics were declared and overthrown. Civil wars divided the nation. Spain had gone from global empire to struggling European state. The 20th century, Civil War, and Franco. The final blow to Spain's imperial pride came in 1898 when it lost Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines after a war with the United States. The empire was gone. In 1931, Spain became a republic once more. Hopes were high for democracy, but society was divided. Left versus right, monarchists versus republicans, church versus state. In 1936, these tensions exploded into the Spanish Civil War. It was one of the most brutal conflicts of the century. Cities were bombed, villages destroyed, families torn apart. The world watched as fascism, communism, and democracy clashed on Spanish soil. German planes bombed the town of Guernica, inspiring Picasso's haunting masterpiece. By 1939, General Francisco Franco had triumphed. He established a dictatorship that would last nearly 40 years. Under Franco, political freedoms were crushed, opponents imprisoned or executed, and Spain remained isolated from much of the modern world. But Franco's regime also oversaw economic modernization in the 1950s and 60s, pulling Spain slowly out of poverty. Still, the dictatorship cast a long shadow. It would not end until Franco's death in 1975. Modern Spain. After Franco's death, King Juan Carlos I surprised the world. Instead of continuing dictatorship, he guided Spain into democracy. The 1978 Constitution established a parliamentary monarchy, guaranteeing freedoms and rights. Spain joined the European Union in 1986, embracing modernity. Its cities became global cultural centers, Barcelona with its architecture, Madrid with its museums, Seville and Granada with their deep traditions. Spain also faced challenges: separatist violence from ETA in the Basque Country, economic crises, and debates over Catalonia's independence. Yet through it all, Spain endured. Today, Spain is a vibrant democracy, a cultural powerhouse, and one of the most visited nations on earth. From the rhythms of flamenco to the genius of Picasso and Gaudí, from the pilgrim trails of Santiago to the beaches of the Mediterranean, Spain is a land where history lives in every stone, every street, every song. The story of Spain is one of resilience. From caves to empire, from decline to renewal, Spain has endured every storm.
The Reconquista in detail. The Reconquista was not a single war, but a centuries-long struggle. In the Kingdom of Leon and Castile, Christian monarchs reclaimed lands, step by step, often resettling them with farmers, builders, and priests. In the Kingdom of Aragon, warriors sailed into the Mediterranean, conquering the Balearic Islands and even Sicily. The most legendary battle came in 1212, Las Navas de Tolosa. Christian armies from across Spain, united under the cross, clashed with the Almohad Caliphate. Against all odds, they achieved a decisive victory, breaking Muslim power in central Spain. New cities emerged. Toledo, once Muslim, became a center where translators worked tirelessly, bringing Arabic, Greek, and Hebrew knowledge into Latin, fueling Europe's Renaissance. In the 14th century, the Black Death devastated Spain, killing perhaps a third of the population. Yet the Reconquista pressed on. By the 15th century, only Granada remained under Muslim control. And in 1492, under Ferdinand and Isabella, that too fell. The Reconquista was complete. Spain was now united under Catholic rule. But with unity came hard choices. Muslims and Jews were forced to convert or leave, ending centuries of convivencia, coexistence. It was a turning point, both a triumph and a tragedy.
Cultural Golden Age. Even as Spain's empire strained, its culture burned bright. In literature, Lope de Vega wrote hundreds of plays, shaping Spanish theater. Calderón de la Barca penned philosophical dramas like Life is a Dream. Cervantes, with Don Quixote, gave birth to the modern novel, a work still read worldwide. In art, Diego Velázquez captured the Spanish court with unmatched realism. His masterpiece, Las Meninas, remains a mystery and a marvel. El Greco, though Greek by birth, painted haunting religious visions in Toledo, with elongated figures that seemed to touch heaven. Spanish music, from sacred choral works to the rhythms of folk dances, spread through Europe. Cathedrals soared, universities thrived, and Spain left an intellectual mark far beyond its borders. It was an age of contrasts. Immense wealth flowing from the Americas, yet poverty growing at home. Splendor and suffering, glory and decline, all woven into Spain's golden century. Even as its empire faded, this cultural flourishing endured.
Modern Spain in depth. Spain's transition after Franco was not just political, it was cultural rebirth. The 1980s saw the Movida Madrileña, a countercultural explosion of music, film, and art. Directors like Pedro Almodóvar redefined Spanish cinema, challenging old taboos and showcasing Spain's new freedom. Spain hosted the 1992 Barcelona Olympics, a dazzling event that symbolized its transformation into a modern European power. Cities were revitalized, infrastructure improved, and Spain was suddenly on the global stage again, proud, democratic, creative. Challenges persisted. ETA's terrorism haunted the Basque Country until its dissolution in the 2010s. Economic crises hit hard in 2008, with unemployment soaring. Catalonia's independence movement created political turmoil, yet Spain endures. Its football teams dominate the world, its artists, chefs, and architects continue to inspire. Millions of visitors walk the Camino de Santiago, explore the Alhambra, or lose themselves in the streets of Seville. The story of Spain is not finished. It is a nation that constantly reinvents itself, rising from each fall with new strength. From cave paintings to cathedrals, from empire to democracy, Spain's history is proof that a nation's soul is more powerful than any single ruler, war, or empire. This is Spain. This is history, and this has been Midnight Docks.
Roman Hispania in depth. Roman Hispania was more than roads and aqueducts. It was a laboratory of empire. The Romans introduced vineyards, olive groves, and wheat fields, laying the foundations of Spain's agricultural identity. Amphitheaters hosted gladiator fights in cities like Merida, where roaring crowds watched combat under the Spanish sun. The economy thrived on mining. Vast quantities of silver from places like Rio Tinto enriched Rome's coffers, while Spanish horses, renowned for their strength, became prized across the empire. Romanization left deep marks. Local gods blended with Roman deities. Latin spread not by decree, but through trade, marriage, and the army. Over generations, the Iberian languages faded, replaced by the ancestor of modern Spanish, Portuguese, and Catalan. By the 4th century, Christianity was spreading rapidly. Bishops preached in cities, monasteries appeared, and martyrs gave their lives. Hispania became a frontier of faith. But when Rome crumbled, Hispania's fate would pass into new hands, the Visigoths. Al-Andalus, life and culture. What did daily life look like in Muslim Spain? In Córdoba, women were educated, something rare in medieval Europe. Markets buzzed with spices, silk, leather, and books. Architects built intricate gardens with fountains symbolizing paradise. Farmers transformed arid lands with irrigation techniques imported from the Middle East, turning deserts into orchards. Music blended Arab melodies with local traditions, giving birth to sounds that echo in today's flamenco. Philosophers debated Aristotle, poets sang of love, and doctors wrote treatises that would guide medicine for centuries. Christians and Jews, known as dhimmis, lived under Muslim rule. Though they paid special taxes, they often thrived as scholars, merchants, and translators. In this mosaic of faiths, tension coexisted with creativity. Al-Andalus was not just a political entity, it was a cultural miracle, one whose echoes still resonate in Spain's language, architecture, and art.
Spain and the Age of Exploration. The Spanish Empire was built not only on conquest, but also on exploration. Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492 was only the beginning. Soon, explorers like Juan Ponce de León reached Florida, Vasco Núñez de Balboa crossed Panama to glimpse the Pacific, and Ferdinand Magellan's expedition, though completed after his death, circumnavigated the globe. Spanish galleons became the lifeline of empire. They sailed from Seville across the Atlantic, loaded with silver, chocolate, tobacco, and sugar. Manila galleons crossed the Pacific, linking Asia to the Americas for the first time in history. But empire had a darker side. Indigenous populations were devastated by disease and forced labor. Enslaved Africans were brought to the colonies, fueling an economy built on human suffering. The riches of empire came at immense cost, and Spain itself, paradoxically, often squandered its wealth on endless wars in Europe. The Spanish Civil War in detail. The Spanish Civil War was not only a Spanish tragedy, it was a prelude to World War II. On one side stood the Republicans, a coalition of socialists, communists, anarchists, and liberals defending the young republic. On the other, the nationalists, conservatives, monarchists, and fascists, led by General Franco. Foreign powers joined in. Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy sent planes, tanks, and soldiers to support Franco. The Soviet Union aided the Republicans. Volunteers from around the world, including the American Abraham Lincoln Brigade, came to fight for democracy. The war was brutal. Guernica was bombed from the air, one of the first times civilians were deliberately targeted, immortalized in Picasso's painting. Cities like Madrid and Barcelona endured sieges and starvation. Villages were divided, brother against brother. By 1939, Franco's forces stood victorious. The Republic was crushed. 500,000 Spaniards fled into exile, many never to return. The Civil War left scars that Spain still remembers today. Spain in the 21st century. In the 21st century, Spain continues to balance tradition and modernity. It faced hardship during the 2008 financial crisis, when unemployment soared, especially among the youth. Yet Spanish resilience endured. Technology startups flourished, renewable energy expanded, and Spain became a leader in wind and solar power. Social progress also defined modern Spain. Same-sex marriage was legalized in 2005, one of the earliest countries to do so. Gender equality advanced, though challenges remain. Cultural pride is strong. La Tomatina, the running of the bulls, Semana Santa processions, and flamenco festivals showcase traditions that connect past to present. Football clubs like Real Madrid and Barcelona dominate global sport, symbols of Spanish passion. And though regional tensions continue, especially in Catalonia, Spain remains a united democracy, rooted in centuries of history, yet always looking forward.